Welcome back to my Roblox scripting series. In this video, I'll show you how to use the user input service. So let's go ahead and begin. In the last video, I went over local scripts, and the user input service can only be accessed through a local script. So let's go to starter player scripts and create a local script. First, we need to get the user input service. So local user input service is going to equal game.userInputService. Now, as you notice, the service is not visible in the Explorer. It's still there, it's just not visible. It's a hidden service. Now, we could get user input service by doing game.userInputService, but a better way and a more reliable way to do it is to use getService string user input service. This is going to make it so if user input service does not exist yet in your game, it's going to create that service. So overall, it's just better for debugging and it's more reliable. The purpose of the user input service is to listen for inputs from the players. So if the player was to click their mouse, press a key on the keyboard, or tap their screen, the user input service is going to listen for that, and we could run code based off of those inputs. Now let's use the user input service. So a very commonly used event with user input service is input began, which is going to check whenever an input is first activated. And this input began event passes in two arguments. One is input and the other one is game processed event. So we'll just call these I and GP for short. Now inside of the function, this function will run whenever the player activates any input. Now let's print out the input. So if we tested our game, as we can see, every time I click on an input, it's going to print out input object. Now let's say we wanted to print out what this object is. So for that, we would need to use a list called KeyCode, and then we'll get the name of whatever the object is. And now if we play test the game, as we can see, it's going to print out all the keys on the keyboard that I'm pressing. Now if I try to click on my mouse, it's going to print it out as unknown. It's because the mouse keys are on a different list. This list is called UserInputType. Now if I play test the game, I can print out mouse button 1, mouse button 2, but it's not going to recognize any keys on my keyboard and just print out keyboard. Now we can use this to check when a certain key is pressed and run code based off of that. Let's check if I.keycode is equal to enum, because remember, keycode is a list, .keycode dot, let's say, W. So now when the player presses W, we're going to print out W. So now if we play test the game, any other key that I press will not run this unless I press W. Now let's say we wanted to check when the player presses mouse button 1. Instead of using .keycode, we'd use input.UserInputType, which is going to equal enum.UserInputType.mouse button 1. Now in here, we're going to print out M1. So now if we play test the game, whenever I click mouse button 1, it's going to print out M1. By now, I'm sure you realize how useful this service could be. Let's say you're making a combat game, and whenever the player presses 1, it's going to activate a fireball. So you would use the user input service to wait for the key code 1 and then activate that move. If you're making a game on Roblox, you probably want more devices to play your game that aren't just computer. For instance, mobile. So with user input type, we can also check if the player touched their screen. So user input type dot touched is going to check whenever the player touches their screen. So how would we even test this in Studio? Because if I went to test, as you can see, I'm still on my computer. So if I click my mouse, that's just going to do mouse button 1, and I can't just touch on my computer. So Roblox actually has a built-in device emulation. If we go up here to the settings, turn on device simulation, now we can simulate playing on different devices. We can simulate console and VR as well. So now let's just simulate playing on this tablet. So if we were to test the game, as you can see, I can move around the screen just how I would on mobile. And if I touch the screen, as you can see, it's going to print out touched. So that's how you can test your game with different devices on RobloxStudio. Now let's talk about game processed event. So if we were to play test our game, remember when we press W, it's going to print out W in the output. But let's say we wanted to chat out wow. As you can see, it's still printing out W. So let's say we didn't want this to happen because obviously if you're in a game and you're chatting, you don't want to use your abilities while you're chatting. So this is what GameProcessEvent is used for. So we could check if GameProcessEvent, then we're gonna return end, stopping the function. So basically, if we're chatting, we're no longer going to be able to print out W in the output. So we tested the game. As you can see, W still works. But now if we're chatting and we try to type out wow, it's no longer going to print out W in the output. Another event I want to talk about with UserInputService is input ended. This is going to check whenever an input is released. So now if we playtest our game, and now when we hold W, it's not going to print out W in the output. But as soon as we let go, it's going to print out W. So this is when you want to check whenever an input is let go. There are many more events that UserInputService has to offer, so I recommend you go ahead and test them out on your own. Now it's time for the final challenge. And in this challenge, we're going to make a basic sprint system. For this challenge, you're going to need the UserInputService, the player's service, and the player's character. So when the player presses shift, we're going to increase their walk speed because now they should be sprinting. When the player releases shift, we're going to put their walk speed back to normal because now they're walking again. So walk speed is located inside of the humanoid. Shift will not work when you have GameProcessEvent on and shift lock turned on. Make sure you turn off shift lock so it's able to work. So good luck, try your best, and then I'll explain how to do it. Here's how you do the sprint system. So first we gotta get the UserInputService. This is short for UserInputService, which is gonna equal GameGetService UserInputService. And now we're gonna get the local player service, which is gonna be GameGetService players. Now we gotta get the player's character. The local player is going to equal players.localPlayer, giving us the player that owns this local script. And now we have to get the local character, which is gonna be player.character. But since we're in a local script, we're not going to be able to load the character in time when this line runs. So instead of using player.character, we need to use player.characterAdded, which is an event for the player. And now we're going to add next to it :wait, which is going to wait for the character to be added and then pass in the character as our variable, giving us our character. So this is what you need to make the sprint system. Now that we have what we need, let's actually create the sprint system. So using the UserInputService, we're going to use input began, connect that to a function, giving us the input and the GameProcessEvent. Now let's use the GameProcessEvent. So if GameProcessEvent, then return end, stopping the function if the player is chatting. If input.KeyCode is equal to enum.keycode.left_shift, then we're going to go ahead and go inside of our character, find our character's humanoid, and get our character's walk speed, and let's increase that by 20. So now in our game, if we test and we press left shift, make sure you also have your shift lock off because it will not work with GameProcessEvent. Now, as you can see, we're going to gain 20 speed, but right now we can't slow down, and if we keep pressing shift, we're just going to keep gaining more speed. Now we want our player to slow back down. So let's just copy paste this, and instead of using input began, we're going to use input ended. And instead of gaining 20 speed, we're going to lose 20 speed. So now if we play test our game, we hold shift, as you can see, we're sprinting, and now we let go of shift, and now we're back to walking. Now you may think, that's it, right? We just made the sprint system. But this sprint system has a major flaw. Let's say I was sprinting, and then I want to go chat, and then stop sprinting. When I stop chatting, I'm going to keep my speed boost, and when I hold sprint, I'm going to sprint even more. And this could just keep on stacking. So basically, I just found a bug in the game. We could fix this by simply just making our speed equal to a targeted number. Let's say 35, and let's say 16. When we're not sprinting, which is the normal walk speed. Now if we test our game, when we hold shift, we're at 35 speed, and when we let go of shift, we're at 16 speed. Now even though we go to chat and let go of shift, yes, it does keep our speed, but now if we press shift, that's just going to fix itself, as you can see. Great job if you're able to do this. This shows you're able to use UserInputService inside of your Roblox game. Those are the basics of using UserInputService inside of RobloxStudio. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments and I'll try my best to respond. If you found this video useful, consider giving it a like and maybe subscribing. Anyways, have a good rest of your day and goodbye.